Let me start off by saying my son, Adam, is 22 years old. Back when my ex-wife, Tori, and I were trying for kids, we found out that I was infertile. We decided we'd adopt, then about 4 months later my ex-wife is pregnant. I was thrilled because I thought maybe the doctor made a mistake. No, I was wrong. My ex-wife cheated on me and I didn't find out until 20 years later. Tori told me 2 years ago that she cheated on me. And we did a paternity test to make sure, and well, he's not my biological son. My ex and I divorced a few weeks later. Ever since my son found out the truth, he wanted to meet his biological father. He did, and they started to become really close. It hurt me much more than I thought it would. He's an adult, he can make his own decisions, but it hurt really bad. They started to bond really well, and all of a sudden Adam became really distant from me. It's been like this for almost a year and a half. I tried to text him to make plans for dinner and he said he's busy with Chris, biological father. I tried numerous times to connect with him by calling and texting, but he never made plans aside from like a meal every other month. We used to do stuff every other week, but it's been completely different since he found out about Chris. I couldn't stand it. My son, who I raised since he was a baby, treated me like I didn't matter. Anytime we'd actually have plans, he would still be cold and distant. What I mean by that is became much more defensive of his personal life. I'd ask him how classes or friends were and he'd just say they were fine but never go deeper than that. He also changed his major from econ to computer science and didn't even mention it to me until a year later. I told him how much he was hurting me because of how distant he was and he apologized and said he'd do better. He never did. I told him numerous times and he never changed. He was still distant. What was the final straw for me was the phone conversation I had with him last week. He said he was going to change his last name to Chris because he liked it so much and because they were close. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him this. I can't believe you are going to do this. That's really disappointing to me. If you decide to change your last name, go ahead, but if you do that, then I'm no longer your father and I don't want to be involved in your life. He hung up on me. I didn't even bother reaching out because I know he wouldn't respond. I stand by what I said. I meant every word and still do. The last name change to me means he no longer views me as a father and views Chris as his, despite the fact he's 22. My family told me I'm being unreasonable, meanwhile my best friends think it's reasonable. After I found out about Chris, I took a couple of days and didn't speak to my ex-wife or Adam. They didn't contact me. I didn't contact them. I needed a break. A lot of you are asking for a deeper meaning behind this, and I think I finally figured out why he's been so cold. A few months before my wife told us the truth, we were in a very long argument. His grandma, my mother, left a big inheritance for him that I am fully in charge of. Enough to pay for college and have enough wiggle room to not stress all the time about it. After a semester of university, he started dating this girl. He was head over heels in love with her. I never met the girl, so I have zero clue how she felt about the relationship. Suddenly, after a few months of dating, Adam asked me for about $3,000 to be deposited into his account from the inheritance. I already paid for the semester, so this was odd to me. I asked Adam why he needed the money. He said his girlfriend was having trouble paying for her tuition and asked my son to help. I told him no because it seemed to me that she was treating him like a piggy bank. He spent over $1,000 on her in just under a few months. He would constantly talk about how he loved going shopping with her so he could buy her things. To me, she was just after my son's inheritance, and I was right. What I said to him was basically this: Adam, you haven't been dating this girl for very long at all, and for me to give you that much money just to spend on her after a few months doesn't sit well with me. That's the money your grandmother left you for your college career, not hers. If you two were more serious, then I would think about it, but I'm not giving you that much money to just give your girlfriend. Turns out my guess was right, and she was after his money. They broke up shortly after and have had an on-again, off-again relationship ever since. He was upset with me, but he eventually got over it after a few months. Then we found out about my ex's affair. I don't know if that's the real reason he's so cold. That was a huge argument that went on for weeks until she left him. I met Jane through Joe's girlfriend at her birthday party last year. At first Jane was fun to talk to, but not even an hour later Jane was really into me and tried really badly to hit on me during the party, which pretty much ruined my time there as the feeling was not mutual in the slightest bit. Also at the time I was already with someone, so the first impression I got from Jane was that she was clingy, annoying, and just wouldn't stop bothering me. Unfortunately for me, she became part of my larger friend group because she is part of Joe's girlfriend's friend group. That is a mouthful, sheesh. And because me and Joe hang out a lot and I am also friends with his girlfriend, I pretty much run into her at minimum twice a month. So first time Jane asked me out was a month after that party. I informed her I was with someone and not interested. She tried again 2 months later when I broke up with my then girlfriend. Again I declined her advances and told her I was not interested. I got into a new relationship not long after, but unfortunately she and I broke up about 2 months ago. Since then, as you might have anticipated, Jane has asked me out again. I said no again. Well, that brings us to this week. Everything has been opening up here, and Joe had been trying to fix me up with a friend of his girlfriend and would not tell me who. He is well aware of me having rejected Jane multiple times and the fact I am not interested in her. He knows this in detail. After a lot of what he calls convincing and I call whining, I had no interest in dating anytime soon. I relented and decided to agree to this double date idea of his. We agree on meeting at Joe's apartment, and lo and behold, Joe, his girlfriend, and Jane are occupying the dinner table, obviously intending for my date to be Jane. I honestly just got so goddamn angry that I couldn't even get a single word out, turned around and left. I have been bombarded with texts and calls about how much of a douche I am and how terribly I hurt Jane and so on, and I am just like, I literally rejected her like 3 times. I am not interested in her. You knew that. Your girlfriend knew that. Our entire friend group has a running joke about obsessive Jane FFS, so literally everyone knows it. My dad died and I'm scared my family won't get along. So yesterday after my dad comes home he eats what my mom made for him. Eggs and Spam. To be clear, he has a pre-existing medical history of high blood pressure and gout. First found out when he was admitted to the hospital in 2015 when he fell ill, and we basically had to force him to go to the hospital. He didn't want to go. He was put on medication since, with changes to them maybe a year or so ago. So back to when after he ate. My half-sister heard a thud around 740-ish and told me to check. She thought maybe my parents are arguing. I go down and see my dad on the kitchen floor, my mom behind him a few feet away, and I hear him snoring. I ask my mom a question, get worried, run back upstairs and knock on my sister's door. She calls my other sister and also tells me to stop wasting time, call 911. I was scared and frantic. I wish I called 911 or saw him when he came in so I could maybe have called sooner. They get frantic too and we all start yelling at each other, and I try to maintain order also as I'm talking to 911 person. At some point in all of this my brother-in-law yells for help and I help him turn my dad onto his side. He said he could choke on his saliva. My dad stops snoring and we start panicking. The EMS tells us how to perform CPR, but my sisters keep yelling, and so I try to get them working together. They finally start working on it. One is doing compression and the other giving him air and sometimes rotating. Fire department and ambulance gets here and they start doing the same thing but also have defibrillators, and honestly, I'm just in shock still. It was maybe 8:03 p.m. when they came or so, I don't remember, it's all a blur. I checked my phone for timestamp, but I called twice so I forgot when original call was placed. They called it at 8:50 p.m. and I just began to lose it. My aunt comes and my sister is trying to call my dad's work to let his bosses know. We talk about how we want my dad's arrangements and agree on cremation. We don't have the money for anything else, but also my sister wants the remains. My mom is bipolar schizophrenic and my sisters and bro-in-law don't get along. Her because of a whole history that would keep you here forever if I tried to type it. My dad was a bad person but he still chose us and tried his best to provide regardless of his fallacies. He had my mom's back too, saying he wouldn't kick her out or place her in a mental home. My sisters kinda want that, I think, but I'm scared to talk about it. My mom is okay sometimes but also acts up of her mental illness sometimes, and my dad and I were her constants regardless of what happened. My mom is old and still wants to benefit from some social security services that my dad had, but my sisters and I Think we should get a majority control of his account. There's a lot of renovations to be done. BC he ignored upkeep of the house for a number of years, example, the roof. My mom is not very sad about the ordeal. BC she had a long history of mental abuse from my dad and I understand, but we for some reason stayed together. It how to move forward except for one moment at a time and I'm still waiting for funeral home to come pick up his body. It's 8:13 a.m. now, been waiting since night before. And I have been crying but also I can't sleep and I'm sorry if this doesn't meet guidelines. I just need to vent even though I told a few friends. I'm still in disbelief. How this will moving forward. I believe it can though. But it's hard to stay positive. I'm not gonna be shy about this. My sister sucks. She is a horrible self-centered person who thinks she is the main character. She is not only a horrible person, she is a step monster. She married this guy, who is a freaking pushover. 3 years ago. He has 2 children, 10 and 6. My sister constantly complains about them, saying things like the 6-year-old is gross because he sips too loud or has stained clothing. For the love of God. He is 6. That's what a child is supposed to do. And she is so mean to the 10-year-old girl. She acts straight out jealous of her. I've caught her taunting her, that daddy loves my sister more than her. She is horrible. I have straight up called her out, after trying to talk to her like a million times. At Christmas she was saying, that I'd be nice to have the kids there and I said, why? You hate them? This was when everything was almost over and she had been bragging to her friends that her husband had spent more on her than on daughter. A fight ensued. My parents reprimanded me but my cousins took my side and called her out, noting every moment that they had witnessed her being horrible. Her husband obviously took her side and said that she was a wonderful stepmother and that the kids love her. To which I said that was a lie, as I had consoled them countless times after they were taunted by my sister. They left and we haven't talked since. One day I was running errands and run into my step-nephews who were with their mother. I had never met her. And honestly she is wonderful. We decided to have some coffee. While the kids were playing, she asked me how her children behaved etc. I said they were wonderful and then I just spilled the beans on my sister. How awful she was. What I've heard her say to the kids, the inaction of her ex-husband. By the end she was horrified. She said the kids didn't like her. But she always chucked it up to my sister being the new woman in their father's life. She said the kids never really said anything even when she asked. I then told her I was very concerned for the children as my sister had straight up told the 10-year-old that it would be better if she disappeared from her father's life. Their mother saw red and asked me if I'd be willing to testify. She said that this was unacceptable and she would be taking their father to court again. I said I would recount the events that I witnessed and could ask my cousins who witnessed a lot too. She was very grateful. I asked my cousins who were all willing to recount the events. Word got around to my parents and by extension my sister, and they have been calling me the biggest asshole on the planet who would betray family on a whim.